What do you love most about this time of the year, when everything is just beginning to bud and blossom and the air is filled with birdsong and the sweet scents of spring? I don't know about you, but one of the things I really love about this time of year, especially in Scotland, is seeing all the bluebells and the daffodils and the cute baby lambs. Hello everyone, I'm Kathleen Pelly. Welcome to the special omnibus edition of Journey with Story, where we are offering you all of this month's episodes in one place. One of the many things I love about good stories is that they can help you love the world a little more, help you see what is important about this life, and help you to be grateful for all the beauty that surrounds us. Oh, mums and dads and grown-ups, when I go to schools to talk about the importance of reading aloud to our children, I like to share this beautiful African proverb with parents and teachers. What we teach a child to love is more important than what we teach a child to learn. Thanks to all of you who are teaching your children to love stories. For this love of stories, I believe, helps our little ones to live life more joyfully, compassionately, and creatively. Now, let's take an omnibus journey with story. Let's take a journey with The White Horse Girl and the Blue-Winged Boy by Carl Sandburg. When the dishes are washed at night time and the cool of the evening has come in summer, or the lamps and fires are lit for the night in winter, then the fathers and mothers in the Rutabaga country sometimes tell the young people the story of the White Horse Girl and the Blue-Winged Boy. The White Horse Girl grew up far in the west of the Rutabaga country. All the years she grew up as a girl, she liked to ride horses. Best of all things for her was to be straddle of a white horse, loping with a loose bridle among the hills and along the rivers of the west Rutabaga country. She rode one horse white as snow, another horse white as new washed sheep wool, and another white as silver. And she could not tell because she did not know which of these three white horses she liked best. "Snow is beautiful enough for me any time," she said. "New washed sheep wool, or silver out of a ribbon of the new moon, any or either is white enough for me. I like the white manes, the white flanks, the white noses, the white feet of all my ponies. I like the forelocks hanging down between the white ears of all three my ponies." And living neighbour to the White House Girl in the same prairie country with the same black crows flying over their places was the Blue-Winged Boy. All the years he grew up as a boy, he liked to walk with his feet in the dirt and the grass, listening to the winds. Best of all things for him was to put on strong shoes and go hiking among the hills and along the rivers of the west Rutabaga country, listening to the winds. There was a blue wind of daytime, starting sometimes 6 o'clock on a summer morning, or 8 o'clock on a winter morning. And there was a night wind with blue of summer stars in summer, and blue of winter stars in winter. And there was yet another, a blue wind of the times between night and day, a blue dawn and evening wind. All three of these winds he liked so well, he could not say which he liked best. The early morning wind is strong as the prairie, and whatever I tell it, I know it believes and remembers, he said. And the night wind, with the big dark curves of the night sky in it, the night wind gets inside of me and understands all my secrets. And the blue wind of the times between, in the dusk, when it is neither night nor day, this is the wind that asks me questions and tells me to wait, and it will bring me whatever I want. Now, of course, it happened as it had to happen. The white horse girl and the blue wind boy met, she straddling one of her white horses and he wearing his strong hiking shoes in the dirt and the grass. It had to happen they should meet among the hills and along the rivers of the west Rutabaga country, where they lived as neighbours. And of course, she told him all about the snow-white horse, and the horse white as new-washed sheep wool, and the horse white as a silver ribbon of the new moon. And he told her all about the blue winds he liked listening to. The early morning wind, the night sky wind, and the wind of the dusk between, the wind that asked him questions and told him to wait. One day, the two of them were gone. On the same day of the week, the white horse girl and the blue wind boy went away, and their fathers and mothers and sisters and brothers and uncles and aunts wondered about them and talked about them, because they didn't tell anybody beforehand they were going. Nobody at all knew beforehand or afterward why they were going away, the real, honest why of it. They left a short letter, and it read, "To all our sweethearts, old folks and young folks, we have started to go where the white horses come from and where the blue winds begin. Keep a corner in your hearts for us while we are gone. The white horse girl, the blue wind boy." That was all they had to guess by in the West Rutabaga country, to guess and guess where two darlings had gone. Many years passed. One day there came riding across the Rutabaga country a grey man on horseback. He looked like he had come a long ways. So they asked him the question they always asked of any rider who looked like he had come a long ways. "Did you ever see the white horse girl and the blue wind boy?" "Yes," he answered, "I saw them." "It was a long, long ways from here I saw them," he went on. "It would take years and years to ride to where they are. They were sitting together and talking to each other, sometimes singing, in a place where the land runs high and tough rocks reach up. And they were looking out across water, blue water, as far as the eye could see. And away far off the blue waters met the blue sky. 'Look,' said the boy, 'that's where the blue winds begin.' And far out on the blue waters, just a little this side of where the blue winds begin, there were white manes, white flanks, white noses, white galloping feet. 'Look,' said the girl, 'that's where the white horses come from.' And then nearer to the land came thousands in an hour, millions in a day. White horses, some white as snow, some like new-washed sheep wool, some white as silver ribbons of the new moon. I asked them, 'Whose place is this?' They answered, 'It belongs to us. This is what we started for. This is where the white horses come from. This is where the blue winds begin.'" And that was all the grey man on horseback would tell the people of the West Rutabaga country. That was all he knew, he said, and if there was any more, he would tell it. and the fathers and mothers and sisters and brothers and uncles and aunts of the White Horse Girl and the Blue Wind Boy wondered and talked often about whether the grey man on horseback made up the story out of his head or whether it happened just like he told it. Anyhow, this is the story they tell sometimes to the young people of the West Rutabaga country when the dishes are washed at night and the cool of the evening has come in summer, or the lamps and fires are lit for the night in winter. Now, let's take a journey with The Boy and the Violin. Once upon a time there was a man who had an only son. When the man died, the son was left all alone in the world. There was not very much property, just a cat and a dog, a small piece of land, and a few orange trees. The boy gave the dog away to a neighbour and sold the land and the orange trees. Every bit of money he obtained from the sale he invested in a violin. He had longed for a violin all his life, and now he wanted one more than ever. While his father had lived, he could tell his thoughts to his father, but now there was none to tell them to except the violin. What his violin said back to him made the very sweetest music in the world. The boy went to hire out as a shepherd to care for the sheep of the king, but he was told that the king already had plenty of shepherds and had no need of another. The boy took his violin, which he had brought with him, and hid himself in the deep forest. There he made sweet music with the violin. The shepherds who were nearby guarding the king's sheep heard the sweet strains, but they could not find out who was playing. The sheep too heard the music. Several of them left the flock and followed the sound of the music into the forest. They followed it until they reached the boy and the cat and the violin. The shepherds were greatly disturbed when they found out how their sheep were straying away into the forest. They went after them to bring them back, but they could find no trace of them. Sometimes it would seem that they were quite near to the place from which the music came, but when they hurried in that direction, they would hear the strains of music coming from a distant point in the opposite direction. They were afraid of getting lost themselves, so they gave up in despair. When the boy saw how the sheep came to hear his music, he was very happy. His music was no longer the sad, sweet sound it had been when he was lonely. It became happier and happier. After a while it became so merry that the cat began to dance. When the sheep saw the cat dancing, they began to dance too. Soon a company of monkeys passed that way and heard the sound of the music. They began dancing immediately. They made such a chattering that they almost drowned the music. The boy threatened to stop playing if they could not be happy without being so noisy. After that, the monkeys chattered less. After a while, a tapir heard the jolly sound. Immediately, his 3-toed hind feet and 4-toed front feet began to dance. He just couldn't keep them from dancing, so he too joined the procession of boy, cat, sheep and monkeys. Next, the armadillo heard the music. In spite of his heavy armour, he had to dance too. Then a herd of small deer joined the company. Then the anteater danced along with them. The wild cat and the tiger came too. The sheep and the deer were terribly frightened, but they kept dancing on just the same. The tiger and wild cat were so happy dancing that they never noticed them at all. The big snakes curled their huge bodies about the tree trunks, and wished that they too had feet with which to dance. The birds tried to dance, but they could not use their feet well enough and had to give it up and keep flying. Every beast of the forests and jungles which had feet with which to dance came and joined the jolly procession. The happy company wandered on and on until finally they came to the high wall which surrounds the land of the giants. The enormous giant who stood on the wall as guard laughed so hard that he almost fell off the wall. He took them to the king at once. The king laughed so hard that he almost fell off his throne. His laugh shook the earth. The earth had never before been shaken at the laugh of the king of the giants, though it had often heard his angry voice in the thunder. The people did not know what to make of it. Now it happened that the king of the land of giants had a beautiful giantess daughter who never laughed. She remained sad all the time. The king had offered half his kingdom to the one who could make her laugh, and all the giants had done their very funniest tricks for her. Never once had they brought even a tiny little smile to her lovely face. "If my daughter can keep from laughing when she sees this funny sight, I'll give up in despair and eat my hat," said the king of the land of giants, as he saw the jolly little figure playing upon the violin and the assembly of cat, sheep, monkeys, and everything else dancing to the happy music. If the giant king had known how to dance, he would have danced himself, but it was fortunate for the people of the earth that he did not know how. If he had, there is no knowing what might have happened to the earth. As it was, he took the little band into his daughter's palace, where she sat, surrounded by her servants. Her lovely face was as sad could be. When she saw the funny sight, her expression changed. The happy smile which the king of the land of giants had always wanted to see played about her beautiful lips. A merry laugh was heard for the first time in all her life. The king of the land of giants was so happy that he grew a league in height, and nobody knows how much he gained in weight. "You shall have half my kingdom," he said to the boy, "just as I promised if anyone made my daughter laugh." The boy from that time on reigned over half of the kingdom of giants as prince of the land. He never had the least bit of difficulty in preserving his authority, for the biggest giants would at once obey his slightest request if he played on his violin to them. The beasts stayed in the land of the giants so long that they grew into giant beasts. But the boy and his violin always remained just as they were when they entered the land. Now, let's take a journey with Why Dogs Sniff. Once upon a time, the dogs gave a dinner party. All the dogs were invited, and all the dogs accepted the invitation. There were big dogs and little dogs and middle-sized dogs. There were black dogs and white dogs and brown dogs and grey dogs and yellow dogs and spotted dogs. There were dogs with long tails and dogs with short tails and dogs with no tails at all. There were dogs with little sharp pointed ears and dogs with big flat drooping ears. There were dogs with long slender noses and dogs with short fat turn-up noses. All these dogs came to the party. Now, the dinner was a most elaborate affair. Everything had been arranged with the utmost care. All the good things to eat were spread out upon the rocks by the sea. A merry, sparkling little brook brought water to drink. The sun was shining brightly, and a soft, gentle little breeze was blowing. Everything seemed absolutely perfect. But there was a cross, fussy old dog who came to the party. She was a yellow dog, they say. Nothing ever suited her. Whenever she went to the party, she always found fault with something. Sometimes there was too little to eat, and sometimes there was too much. Sometimes the hot things were not hot enough, and sometimes the cold things were not cold enough. Sometimes the hot things were so hot they burned her mouth, and the cold things so cold that they gave her indigestion. There was always something wrong. At this party, however, there was not too much to eat, and there was not too little to eat. The hot things were all just hot enough, and the cold things were all just cold enough. Everything seemed to be exactly as it should be. "How good everything tastes," remarked the big black dog between polite mouthfuls. "Everything is seasoned exactly right," added the black and white spotted dog between mouthfuls which were entirely too large to be polite. That was an unfortunate remark. The cross, fussy yellow dog heard it. She noticed immediately that the big juicy bone she was eating had not been seasoned with pepper. "Will somebody please pass the pepper?" she asked. All the black dogs and white dogs and brown dogs and yellow dogs and grey dogs and spotted dogs fell over each other trying to find the pepper to pass. There was not a single bit of pepper at that dinner party. "I can't eat a mouthful until I have some pepper," whined the yellow dog. "I'll go into the city and get some pepper," said one of the dogs. Nobody ever knew which dog it was. The dog who went into the city to get the pepper never came back. Nobody ever knew what became of him. But now, whenever two dogs meet, they always sniff at each other. If one of them should happen to be the dog who went into the city to get the pepper, he would surely smell of pepper. Now, let's take a journey with Nibbly Quibbly the goat. Once upon a time there lived an old man and an old woman. One day the old man went to a fair and he bought a goat. He took the goat home and early the next morning told his eldest son to take it out to graze. The youth grazed the goat till evening and then drove it home. He drove it straight to the gate, and the old man stood there in his red boots and said, "Tell me, little goat, tell me, Nibbly Quibbly, have you had enough to eat and to drink?" "No, Grandpa, I have not drunk or eaten," the goat replied. "As I ran by a tree with a hop and a skip, I whisked off a leaf and nibbled the tip. As I ran by a brook with a skip and a hop, I scooped up some water and had a drop, and that was all that I ate and all that I drank." The old man was very angry with his son for not having looked after the goat properly, and he turned him out of the house. The next day he sent the old woman to graze the goat. The old woman grazed the goat all day, and when evening came, she drove it home. And the old man stood there by the gate in his red boots and said, "Tell me, little goat, tell me, Nibbly Quibbly, have you had enough to eat and drink?" "No, Grandpa, I have not drunk or eaten," the goat replied. "As I ran by a tree with a hop and a skip, I whisked off a leaf and nibbled the tip.
As I ran by a brook with a skip and a hop, I scooped up some water and had a drop, and that was all that I ate and all that I drank. So the old man turned the old woman out of the house too. On the next day he himself went to graze the goat. He grazed it all day long, and when evening came he drove it out into the road and himself ran on ahead and stood by the gate of his house in his red boots. Said the old man, "Tell me, little goat, tell me, Nibbly, Quibbly, have you had enough to eat and to drink?" "No, Grandpa, I have not drunk or eaten," the goat replied. "As I ran by a tree with a hop and a skip, I whisked off a leaf and nibbled the tip. As I ran by a brook with a skip and a hop, I scooped up some water and had a drop, and that was all that I ate and all that I drank." The old man was very angry with the goat, and he lunged at him, ready to punish him, but the goat tore itself loose and ran off to the forest. It saw a rabbit's hut there, and it came inside and hid on the stove. By and by the rabbit ran in, and he saw that there was someone in his hut. "Who is there in my hut?" he called, and the goat called back, "I am Nibbly, Quibbly the goat, with a torn skin and coat. To the fair I was brought, and for 3 kopecks bought. I will frighten you off with a bleat. I will stamp on you with my feet. With my horns I will pierce you and crush you. With my tail away I will brush you, and that will be the end of you." The rabbit was very frightened. He ran out of the hut, sat down under an oak tree, and began to cry. By and by a bear came lumbering by. "Why are you crying, Runny Bunny?" he asked. "How can I help it, Grumbly Rumbly? A terrible beast is sitting in my hut." "I am going to drive him out," said the bear, and off he made for the hut. "Who is sitting in this hut?" he called, and the goat called back, "I am Nibbly, Quibbly the goat, with a torn skin and coat. To the fair I was brought, and for 3 kopecks bought. I will frighten you off with a bleat. I will stamp on you with my feet. With my horns I will pierce you and crush you. With my tail away I will brush you, and that will be the end of you." The bear was very frightened, and out he ran from the hut. "I'm afraid I cannot help you, Runny Bunny," he said. So the rabbit sat down under the oak tree again, and he cried and he cried. By and by a wolf came lolloping up. "Why are you crying, Runny Bunny?" he asked. "How can I help it, Howly Prowly? A terrible beast is sitting in my hut." "I am going to drive him out," said the wolf. "I don't believe it. The bear tried and he couldn't, so how can you?" "Well, just see if I don't." And off the wolf made for the hut. "Who is sitting in this hut?" he called, and the goat called back, "I am Nibbly, Quibbly the goat, with a torn skin and coat. To the fair I was brought, and for 3 kopecks bought. I will frighten you off with a bleat. I will stamp on you with my feet. With my horns I will pierce you and crush you. With my tail away I will brush you, and that will be the end of you." The wolf was very frightened, and out he ran. "I'm afraid I cannot help you, Runny Bunny," he said. And Runny Bunny went and sat under the oak tree again, and he cried and he cried. By and by a fox came scampering up. "Why are you crying, Runny Bunny?" she asked. "How can I help it, Smiley Wiley? A terrible beast is sitting in my hut." "I am going to drive him out," said the fox. "I don't believe it, Smiley Wiley. The bear tried and he couldn't, and the wolf tried and he couldn't, so how can you?" "Well, just see if I don't." And off the fox made for the hut. "Who is sitting in this hut?" she called, and the goat called back, "I am Nibbly, Quibbly the goat, with a torn skin and coat. To the fair I was brought, and for 3 kopecks bought. I will frighten you off with a bleat. I will stamp on you with my feet. With my horns I will pierce you and crush you. With my tail away I will brush you, and that will be the end of you." The fox was very frightened, and out she ran. "I'm afraid I can't help you, Runny Bunny," she said. And Runny Bunny sat down under the oak tree again, and he cried and he cried. By and by a crayfish came crawling up. "Why are you crying, Runny Bunny?" he asked. How can I help it? A terrible beast is sitting in my hut. I am going to drive him out. I don't believe it. The bear tried and he couldn't. The wolf tried and he couldn't. The fox tried and she couldn't. So how can you? Well, just see if I don't. And with that, the crayfish crawled into the rabbit's hut. Who is sitting in this hut? He called, and the goat called back. I am Nibbly Quibbly the goat, with a torn skin and coat. To the fair I was brought, and for 3 kopecks bought. I will frighten you off with a bleat. I will stamp on you with my feet. With my horns I will pierce you and crush you. With my tail away I will brush you, and that will be the end of you. But this did not stop the crayfish. On and on he crawled, and he crawled up onto the stove and said, By all feared am I, and you'll soon know why. I snap, and you leap. I nip, and you whip. And he nipped the goat hard with his claws. The goat gave a bleat. Down it jumped from the stove, and away it ran as fast as its legs could carry it. And Ronnie Bunny was overjoyed. He came into the hut and thanked the crayfish over and over again, and he lives in his hut to this day, as snug as you please.
Well, which one of these stories did you love the most? Don't forget to check our blog posts, where you can find some discussion questions and background information on our featured Story of the Month. Just go to www.journeywithstory.com and click on the blog tab. You can see the link in our episode notes too. Here's to stories that help us all to live life more joyfully, compassionately and creatively. Cheerio then. Join me next time for Journey with Story. Music and post-production was by Colette Jonas.